Swag mode on. This video is dedicated to my mom, who I lost with a battle with drug addiction 4 years ago today. Mom, if you're somehow watching this, thanks for yelling at those people on Modern Warfare 2 who were calling me slurs when I was little. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to insult people the way I do today. I've been wanting to make this video for a few years now, at least since I was in high school, which was 3 years ago. So for about 3 years, I've been on again, off again, brainstorming on how I'm going to craft this video. If I make it too serious, it's probably going to be depressing, and if I make it too goofy, my family will see it and yell at me for not only taking the loss of my own parent not very seriously, but also the loss of somebody else's parent, and that's the last thing I want to do. So now I feel like I'm at the age of maturity where I think I can handle it respectfully, but also not make it super depressing. But some people may still find this video upsetting, so if you're not comfortable talking about the loss of a loved one, maybe sit this one out. So in 2020, a little animated series on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel was released, created by Pendleton Ward, the creator of Adventure Time, and Duncan Trussell, a stand-up comedian and podcast maker, creator, I don't know. The whole show is almost completely non-linear, and each episode is its own thing, but the one thing that is linear and does follow a story is the build-up to each episode's plot. Clancy Gilroy, our protagonist, uses a multiverse simulator that he stole to visit dying universes, where he takes on the form of something and ends up meeting people and talking to them for his podcast, The Midnight Gospel. Whether it be the President of the United States fighting through the zombie apocalypse talking about psychedelics, or a beast being turned into a hamburger in a meat processing plant. The show is, and this is probably the most insulting way to put it, basically if you took Joe Rogan clips and put them over Subway Surfers. You take snippets of a full podcast and take them over a really pretty and expensive animated TV show. Now, I binge watched most of the show when it came out, but I stopped around the 6th episode, and a year or so went by. And I was in art class with the Logan Prodigital, and he said he wanted to watch the last episode of the show because it was super duper sad. By the end of it, the three of us watching the show were most certainly distraught, at least a little bit. Me probably more than the other two. If you haven't seen the show, you're probably confused on what makes this episode so upsettingly beautiful. And for that, we need some quick background on the episode. The voice actor for Clancy, the main character, is the co-creator of the show, Duncan Trussell. Trussell? I don't know. I'm just going to say Trussell. It's probably wrong, and I apologize for that. The podcasts for the episodes are really cut down versions of his podcast, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. And the final episode of the entire series, titled Mouse of Silver, sees Duncan interviewing his own mother, Deneen, both in real life and in the show, because Clancy and Duncan are both talking to their moms. It's kind of confusing to try to explain it, but it makes sense if you see it. As Clancy puts his head through his universal machine that looks like a vagina, he's transported to a hub to pick his avatar. His mom appears on a ship in the middle of nowhere to talk to him. Once Clancy steps to the door, he becomes a baby again. Seeing his mother wiping away the tears from his face, he asks his mom if she wants to be on the podcast. They talk about Duncan's birth and upbringing as a child. As they walk around, you can start to notice both of them changing very subtly. They're getting older. Each shot, it's more obvious that Clancy is getting older. His teeth start to fall out, he gets taller, and further into the episode, his mom starts to age, but less so. Walking slower, her hair getting grayer, and her face getting, well, more old people features. Eventually, they get to a room and Clancy lays his mom in the bed. They talk about trying to sense the inside of yourself, the warmth of your body, trying to feel what it's like to be you, to be present. To stop thinking about the past and the future and just be there now. We'll come back to that. Left curve, Clancy's mom dies, turns into a mushroom, and then the mushroom gets Clancy pregnant. Yeah, it's weird, but I kind of need to phrase it weird to keep it lighthearted. The whole scene is actually really, really good. Clancy then births his own mother as a baby, and the cycle continues. Clancy and his mom get older and they talk about being their true self and being in that moment and thinking on it. Deneen, Duncan's mother, says you will have questions about things you normally wouldn't have. In these situations, you'll question something at least. Once again, we'll come back to it. It's important. Mom walks an elderly Clancy down the hall into a heart sphere and delivers a bombshell. Deneen has been fighting breast cancer for about 4 years, and at this point, it's stage 4. They talk about how a person reacts to even the worst things possible can change their outlook on life. In quote, they use a tornado tearing apart your house as a placeholder for any terrible situation. And the quote Duncan's phrasing here, it's an extreme extreme version of a tornado knocking a house down. Being told dozens of times that she has 6 months to live, Deneen made peace with herself that she cannot control when she will go. It's easier to go with the flow of the river than it is to fight it. And that's where we get the most heartbreaking line of the entire episode, talking about how eventually everyone will go when it's their time. Even though our egos tell us it'll never happen to us or our families, it will eventually happen. Duncan, obviously upset by what his mother is telling him, asks what you're supposed to do in a situation of heartbreak like that. You cry. You cry because that's all you can do. Duncan talks about having to face the truth, this reality of losing his mom to something that he can do nothing about. End quote. It's the realest amount of truth I've ever gotten, but I don't want it. It's not good. And the people that are trying to avoid that truth, and the only way to experience that truth is to have it. The whole time they turn into like planets and shit, and as these planets, Deneen talks about accepting death won't change it, but it has made her feel more alive and grateful for what she has in her life. As they fall into a black hole, Clancy's mom tells him that she loves him one last time, before fading into the void. 3 weeks after recording the podcast, Deneen Fendig passed away from her illness, leaving not only me, but hopefully everyone who watched this not only feeling like they just got punched in the stomach, but also inspiring me to look at death in a different light. Awful, terrible scene, had me crying like a fucking baby while I was rewatching this for the script. At the last moments of the episode, the whole side plot of Clancy being arrested for stealing the Universal machine, he falls into the universe simulator and seemingly dies. Alright. That's a wrap on the recap. I skipped some stuff in the episode, so I highly recommend watching the episode for yourself. So let's take a short dive into what I think the episode is about. Now, I'm not a fucking rocket scientist, and I'm far from a film critic, but the episode is obviously about coming to terms with death. But on a longer note, I want to talk about the stuff I said I'd get back to a couple minutes or seconds ago. I don't know how long this video is going to be. Presence. Eventually they get to the room and Clancy lays his mom onto the bed. They talk about trying to sense inside of yourself, the warmth of your body, trying to feel what it's like to be you, to stop thinking about the past, present, and the future and just be there now. Before this conversation, Duncan and Deneen talk about what you should do when you're stressed out in life. No matter the reason, just overline stress about anything. Phrasing it as being stuck in a kayak and the motor goes out and you drift into a pile of bees and thorns. The more and more you think over how you're going to get yourself out of the situation, the more stress you put on yourself. Now, like I said before, I'm a fucking idiot when it comes to the messages in TV and film. If it isn't beating me over the head with the message, I'm probably not going to understand it, or at least understand it the wrong way, so please bear with me as I try my best here. The whole episode at its basic is a guide to death and the grief that comes before and after it. You're stuck in this shitty situation, and you're thinking of all the good times that you had in the past, and you're terrified of what's coming forward in the future. You don't know how long you're going to have with this person or yourself, but you need to be present. Don't grimace at what the future has or how you could have fixed this in the past if you just did something different. Be with the person who is fading away because you don't know how long you're going to have with them. This could be taken at a wider scale since we're all technically dying, so spend time with the people and places that you care about most before you can't see any of them again. Grief. Luckily, I guess unluckily, depending on who you ask, I really had no worry of my mom passing away before she actually did. Of course, I knew it was going to happen eventually, but the way she went was so unpredictable, and given the circumstances at the time, I had no way of even consensually contacting her. So for me, I just had to deal with the fallout of the whole situation. But some people do have that time before. For some hypothetical reason in the situation, the person or you get a call that they aren't going to have much time left on this world. When Duncan brings up his mom is dying of cancer, they talk about when people are infants, they'll cry for their moms for hours and hours that they're hungry and just keep crying until eventually their mom feeds them. And even when they get their food, they bite their mother. When you get told someone's going to die by that person, I'm sure you'd at least be a little upset. Or if a doctor told me I was going to die, I know I'd be pretty pissed off. Deneen talks about reacting to information in different ways can change how you feel about the overall information. If you stay angry at the world or the person that you lost recently, and you can truly never come to peace with the grief, no matter if you're losing someone or you lost someone. If you can never come to terms with that loss in some way, you will never get over it. Acceptance. This is the final thing I want to touch on, bringing us full circle and really clicking together what the episode is about. The episode isn't only about losing someone who you've cared about more than anyone else in the world. It's also about coming to terms with it, and in some ways having peace about the situation. Some wounds will never heal in certain situations, but you can at least try to come to peace with it. Deneen talks about her diagnosis and her life expectancy that she was given, being told over and over again that she only had 6 months to live. Instead of fighting it or becoming angry, she accepted it, feeling more alive than she ever had. While Duncan's still trying to figure out how to come to terms with it, she tells him to cry and to find peace in the situation, because you can't change when it's someone's time to go. I'm not going to plug anything at the end like I normally do, because one, that sounds shitty, and two, well, that was the only one reason, never mind. But the one thing I do want to bring up, if you're having a tough time with the loss of anything, here's my Discord. It sounds really goofy to just message some random person on the internet about something this unfortunate, but my arms are open, and if you need to talk about anything in this situation, do not hesitate to shoot me a message. That's all I got. Love you, Mom. Bye.